have your attention. Please welcome TechCrunch General Manager and Editor-in-Chief, Connie Loizis.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. Welcome to the center of the startup universe. It's great to see you. Thank you so much for coming and joining us these next 3 days. We're so excited about this event. You're going to be seeing real journalism here in real time. We're so proud of it. We've got so many newsmakers who are coming, and we're going to be asking them the fun questions, but also the tough questions, which is why I think we have all of you coming and speakers who are interested year after year in sharing this stage with us. What we're really proud of this year is more than 12,000 of you registered to attend this. So thank you again. We are going to make it worth every minute of your time, I promise. We have a lot in store for you today. We have, of course, this main stage. We also have 8 other stages that are sector specific that are going to be amazing. AI, fintech, sustainability, robotics. It's going to be great. If you haven't checked it out yet, there is a Deal Flow Cafe next door where we're hoping deals are going to be struck, or at least the beginnings of deals will come together. We also have 2 stages of Startup Battlefield, which of course is the centerpiece of the event, and we're so excited about the contestants that you're going to see. Last but not least, we have chats with Lisa Jackson of Apple, NBA great Shaquille O'Neal, and Kyle Walgren of Ensoma, and Reed Jobs of Yosemite. So to kick things off, please welcome your host for today, the lovely and talented U.S. Managing Editor of TechCrunch, Daryl Etherington. Thanks, guys.
Oh, welcome to Disrupt. As you just heard, this is our biggest show ever in so many ways. It's huge in terms of registrations, huge in terms of stages. There are so many stages, so many. I'm going to list them all. I'm going to read when I do that because there are that many. We have the Builders stage. That is where you can go and get practical advice on how to set up your startup, how to get funding, how to do everything. There's the FinTech one, space, sustainability, AI, software as a service, hardware, and security. So all of those for the first year ever combined into one massive event, very exciting. And you can't be in multiple places at once, obviously, there's a lot of stuff, but don't worry. We will have VOD for the stuff here, and we will also have Otter AI taking notes everywhere and providing live transcriptions. So it's doing it right now as I'm saying this. You can see it on the thing over here. And we have that for every stage for the first time this year, so that's great. And then we also have the Pitch Showcase stage, which is downstairs, where startups will actually get to pitch their companies, which is the lifeblood of what we do here at TechCrunch, so be sure to check that out. We have breakouts downstairs, we have roundtables, so you can talk with the people in your industry who matter most, and meet maybe your next co-founder or your next investor, or all of that. But right here, we have, for the first time ever, again, a lot of firsts this year. Starting the show, we have the main event, the thing that all of you love and come here for, which is Startup Battlefield. So let's welcome our first group of contenders for the Disrupt Cup, and also your host for the Startup Battlefield, TechCrunch Managing Editor, Matt Burns.
Oh, wow, there's a lot of you here already. It's only 9:30 in the morning, 9:35, and you guys are packed. Thank you so much for coming. Disrupt is a huge show, but I know why you're really here. You're here for the startups. Thank you so much for coming out. I need you to know that the Startup Battlefield class represents countries across the world. You're going to see companies that are attempting to change the world from so many different vectors. Downstairs, on the second floor, there are 200 companies exhibiting. None of them paid to be here. We take no equity from any company that comes to exhibit. You need to go see those companies. Skip Shack's interview. You can see him on TV. Go downstairs and meet these companies. They're rad. I promise you're going to like them. The Startup Battlefield 200 were selected out of 3,200 companies that applied. We don't charge a fee for application or anything like that. I myself reviewed close to 1,000 applications, and let me tell you, it is hard to narrow it down. Out of the 200, 20 were selected to pitch on this stage. Those 20 were selected as the best of the bunch, and you're going to see some really interesting companies. I'm proud to say that TechCrunch will award a $100,000 check at the end of the convention to the best startup of the bunch, and that's equity free. And I hear that companies love to carry these giant checks through airports. Okay, let's get going. I'm going to bring out the judges, but before I do that, I need to go over the judging criteria. These judges are going to look and evaluate these companies based on the potential for impact that can either be social or financial. Perhaps a company is headed to a big exit, or they're going to change the world and not make any money doing it. Both are given equal footing here. So with that, let's get going. Let's have the judges come out right now. I got some bios to read. You're going to love them. Let me tell you, one of the best parts of my job is taking these long bios and taking a black marker to them and crossing off all their accomplishments. But first, we have Poe. Poe Bronson is a managing director of Indie Bio and general partner at SOSV. Coach Poe, as he's sometimes nerved, was a finance and tech journalist covering Silicon Valley for Wired, the New York Times Magazine, and an op-ed contributor for the Wall Street Journal. His science journalism has been honored with 9 national awards and is the author of 7 best-selling books. His work has been cited in 185 academic journals and 503 books. He's also talking later today on the sustainability stage. Next, we have Mark Florentino, partner at Index Ventures. Mark leads investments focusing largely on fintech and application SaaS. He's especially interested in fintech infrastructure, verticalized payment workflows, and SaaS tools disrupting legacy incumbents. Mark is a board member of lead investor of Index and a number of companies, including RevenueCat, Mercantile, and Catch. Prior to Index, Mark helped build and lead business strategy and finance at Stripe from 2015 to 2019, driving key initiatives for sales operations, growth, and fundraising. Mark is talking later today on the FinTech stage. Next is Sarah Idelson, partner at Excel. Sarah joined Excel in 2022 and focuses on early-stage consumer and enterprise companies. Prior to joining Excel, Sarah spent several years as the head of strategic partnership at Fair. Before Fair, Sarah spent 4 years on the global business development team on Uber, working first on the rideshare business and then on Uber Eats. She has a passion for education and is also an angel investor. Next is Libby Wayman, partner at Breakthrough Energy Ventures. Libby is a business and technology leader with experience in research, product development, entrepreneurship, corporate strategy, and venture capital. Libby served as the global director of innovation for GE Strategy, in which GE invested in over $20 billion in clean innovation and generated over $300 billion in revenue. Prior to GE, Libby served as the director for the U.S. Department of Energy and their Clean Energy Manufacturing Initiative. Last, we have Steve Yang. Steve is the founder and managing partner at Kindred Ventures. It's a seed stage $550 million venture capital fund based right here in San Francisco. Steve served as an early advisor and angel investor since founding at Uber and an early venture backer of Coinbase, Humane, Tonal, Postmates, Color Health, and over 80 other startups. Previously, Steve was a software entrepreneur and the co-founder of several companies in the consumer internet space. Let's give them a round of applause. Thank you for that. But I'm going to need you to give even more applause to the very first company. We're going to bring out from Carlsbad, California, In Diagnostic. Presenting for In Diagnostic is Dr. Octavian Florisco and Ana Florisco. Come on out, guys. Give them a round of applause.
Hi, my name's Octavian, and I'm no stranger to danger. My biggest adventure so far was starting this company and disrupting blood testing. The blood testing market is huge. It's about $90 billion. The big problem is that it's spread over thousands of applications. These existing blood analyzers could only detect a handful of indications, and most customers can't really pay the cost of ownership in order to cover the tests that they need. In Diagnostics is making testing easier and more affordable, not with a universal analyzer, but by eliminating the analyzer altogether. We've done that by integrating into this tiny device. We've integrated the centrifuge, basically the drop of blood sample prep. We've integrated, we've integrated the spectrophotometer, and this also connects to your USB. I present the quick blood test. It takes a drop of blood, and the device hooks up to your phone with a dongle, a USB-C dongle, and you get the results on the screen. In this case, we're testing for ALT and AST. These are two liver enzymes that tell you whether or not your liver is working fine. And the reason we're working with ALT and AST is because they complement the existing menus of blood gas analyzers, but they could only be measured spectrophotometrically. So we're launching this into the veterinary space, where emergency veterinarians could use it to run rapid screens for anesthesia or drugs before they admit the patients. I will pass it over to demo. Let's go to demo, and Anna will run a blood test for us. So all you need to get started is in this box that Anna has. She launches the app on the phone, which prompts her to connect the dongle. You got to get the OS to let you in. There you go. Then you take a device out of the pouch, you open it up, and you insert it into the dongle like that. This is a phone blood test. The device heats up on its own, so you could run it in temperatures that don't actually match what you'd like. And once it's heated, you enter patient ID, you enter operator information, you enter the test you want to run. In this case, we have ALT and AST. And you also have the opportunity to select the blood type. So you could run whole blood, plasma, or serum. And there's a dilution factor in case you have out-of-range samples over 1,000 units per liter. So there's Anna inputting the results, or inputting the data, and she's putting 1 drop of blood directly on the inlet and pressing play. Awesome. OK, back to presentation. Let's take a look what's going. Actually, before we do that, let's go back to demo. This is a device she ran earlier, so you could see the results on the screen right there that give you an indication of what's going on. So anything below 50 is normal for humans, and anything above 50 can be problems with the liver. Specifically, if you have acute liver failure, it could even go over 1,000. So these devices are intended for veterinary and research use only, but for the purposes of this demonstration, we ran a drop of blood. Back to presentation. So let's take a look what's going on. In this integrated device, we have a spectrophotometer. Reagents first start by passing through a filter. The clicker's not really working. We have an integrated filter that traps red blood cells but releases plasma with reagents in it. So if this is a very modular design, it's simple. It doesn't have pumps, doesn't have filters, it doesn't have valves, and the plasma with the reagents goes directly into the cuvettes here. If you want to change out the application, you just change the reagents in the filters. These cuvettes are tiny. They're about 50 nanoliters. So it's about the size of a grain of sand, but better than 3% precision on the path length. We have an optic that takes light from a narrowband LED, splits it multiple ways, and passes it through the cuvette. So we're currently using 2 out of the 4 cuvettes, which allows us to expand the menu by 2 more. Finally, we have our microchip that we designed. Oh, there we go. I'm going to stand over here a little bit. We have the microchip that we designed that digitizes the opacity of the sample and runs the data through SPI to our USB-C dongle. So we ran these devices at UC Davis, one of the leading veterinary universities in the world. We ran 100 animal samples across 5 different species, and we achieved an R-squared of 0.97 for ALT and a 0.99 for AST. These devices, this test represents about a $200 million market in the veterinary space. Like I mentioned, the emergency and critical care alongside the blood gas analyzer is a first opportunity. We also have customers that are monitoring dogs at home for liver disease. And finally, we're also interested in the research market where you could tail nick a mouse, get a small drop of blood. You don't have to anesthetize the mouse or have a terminal bleed, and you could run your liver toxicity studies. But beyond this, there's a broader veterinary market which we call the rapid chemistry segment. So beyond liver market, there's the rapid chemistry segments, which is about $2 billion. Now, this is a pretty interesting market in the sense that it has no low-cost competitors. It has only about 20 analytes that are all generic. There's no proprietary antibodies or reagents to go after, and there's no barriers to entry. So after liver, we plan to expand the menu. We're working on creatine kinase and a couple other applications in order to get to market. The blood testing market
Got to wrap it up.
is much bigger. It's about $15 billion, and we are going to disrupt it by changing the model from a razor blade to a single-use disposable. And I'll leave you with the video of our assembly system. This is how we control costs. We're vertically integrated. We've designed everything. And please come join us, early adopters. Please come help us out and conquer this market and change blood testing. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was wonderful. Give them a round of applause. Let's go to the judges. Poe, we'll start with you.
So congratulations for having 2 liver enzyme tests, but help us understand why your technology, say to expand to a complete metabolic panel and other analytes that you'd be looking for, you classically need aptamers for every one of those. Like, help us understand what at the core can help us go from 2 tests to this sort of at least 20 up to 50 that's in demand from the market right now.
So general chemistries generally don't need aptamers. What happens is that it's a reaction in the plasma, so you have to introduce reagents, and those reagents are, you're not talking about large antibodies or large molecules that you're going after, it's small reactions, so small molecules. And so all the general chemistries are non-proprietary. We could change the filters out, and we could basically expand the menu in order to make a test that runs all of them at once. So it's a scaling issue that we have to work on, but the technology lends itself to easy multiplexing, so we're able to hit all of those indications on a device that looks like this.
So it's then still a chip for each test as opposed to a non-reagent system.
So we have the possibility to put 4 tests. Oh, I don't have a mic. So with this system, we can have 4 tests on this chip, and we can talk backstage about the possibility to do 16 on one chip.
Thank you.
So I'm going to let Poe stick to the science questions because I'm not going to pretend to be a medical expert. But can I ask a little bit about commercialization? So you're thinking about selling this through vet clinics, from my understanding, right, as a big part of this. What is the ROI to a vet clinic when you think about upfront cost of buying the mechanism and then over time using it? And how do you think about that sales cycle to the vet practitioner?
Yeah, so we found a few amazing niches for us, especially in the exotics market. So our selling point is that we have small blood volume. So you only need 20 microliters. When you have a bird or a small animal, this is amazing for them. And we have had great feedback from all of the conferences we've been to. We have about 600 leads already, and people are super excited about it. So they said they would probably pay more than we are actually charging if we make it targeted for exotics. That's only one of them, but we have 5 other use cases that we're happy to talk about.
Yeah, maybe a related question to that. Assuming there's another company out there that's coming at the same blood testing market from the consumer or human angle, what advantages do you see for you all having the veterinary as your sort of entry point and wedge?
Well, we love our vets. We love working with them. So we want to be in that market and just exhaust every possibility that we can have. And that gives us such an amazing training for us to check and break all of our limits. So we want to try and see where we can extend and how can we expand and learn as we go. So this is wonderful. And once we know that we can tackle the human market, we're ready.
And I'd like to add that one of the advantages is that they don't have an instrument that they have to install. So they get a box, they use it, and they run with it. And so there's no training, there's no extra instruments. So low capital cost, low cost of ownership. Just use it alongside their existing systems, and they get more information out of the drop of blood.
Libby?
Yeah, can you talk a little bit more about your pricing model? You mentioned a lot of vets and physicians that you're targeting actually can't afford the analyzer. So can you talk about your pricing model a little bit more?
Sure. I don't know that the cost of the analyzer is necessarily the issue. It's more the cost of ownership. So you're talking about the time it takes. The cost of the analyzer is an issue, the limitation that it has in terms of menu, so you don't want to have multiple analyzers. This is a way of augmenting their menus without additional analyzers, the training, etc. So there's a lot of cost that goes into it, And we lower that cost tremendously for them by making it so easy, like a glucometer. They use a glucometer, even though it has a limited menu, because it's easy to use and they get good data out of it.
How much blood do you have to draw?
Only 20 microliters. So usually 50 microliters is considered a drop, so half of that.
And then for a full, you said you can do 16 tests, up to 16 tests on a chip. Is there any incremental blood draw that you need for that? Or is it one blood draw at that volume?
Yeah, that's in the works. So it's definitely not going to be 10 microliters per analyte, but we don't know how much that would actually.
So it might be a full vial.
No,
we won't get to a full vial. There's a lot of scaling that's still available in the system right now. Like we can make the well smaller, we can make the filter smaller. This is product one to get our feet wet. We can modularly scale easily, and then there's also a significant amount of miniaturization that's still left in the system to get to the point where one drop of blood gives you your complete metabolic profile.
So if a veterinarian office or a research lab, they would have to swap out those modules or have multiple devices for all of these tests?
It's just disposable. So they don't actually have to do anything. Once the product becomes available, they can just buy it. So there's no reverse compatibility issues. There's no analyzer that they have to maintain or upgrade. They just buy the latest thing that comes out and use it on their phone.
So let's take One Medical. If they were to do, not send anyone out to any of the third-party testing offices, they're doing it internally. Can you speak to the unit economics of each purchase that they need to make and the consumption that they have per maybe 100 patients, 1,000 patients?
Quickly, please.
Well, so the unit economics would probably make sense on a service model where these would go directly to the patient homes. They'd run the test and the data would come back to them. So from their perspective, it's just a value add, right? They're upselling their customers and say, hey, you could do this service. We get a cut of it. You get better service, and everybody's happy.
I'm going to take the last question. Are you guys dogs or cat people?
Both.
Both.
Oh, that's great. That's the best answer. Thank you so much. Give them a round of applause.
Thank you.
Okay, next up, from Guadalajara, Mexico, we have Narval. Presenting for Narval is Dr. Jose Luis Nuno and Alejandra Nuno. Give them a round of applause and bring them on out.
Hi, I'm Jose Luis Nuno, CEO and founder of Narval. I am not a morning person, but after my first coffee, I am ready to solve diseases and change the world.
$600 million live with diabetes. 37% will develop diabetic retinopathy, an eye condition that causes vision loss and blindness. The available treatment is a $2,000 monthly injection of an antibody drug in the eye. This is complex, risky for the patient, and expensive, but cannot be done otherwise with the therapeutic alternatives on the market. No matter if you suffer from a respiratory disease, cancer, or a digestive disorder, chances are that you are going to be treated with an antibody drug that costs thousands per dose and can only be delivered by injection. Antibody drugs are a $200 billion market and fundamental to treat diseases, but these are not easy to use or affordable. Antibody drugs are made with monoclonal antibodies, which have significant challenges like their incapability to cross through most tissue barriers on the body, lack of stability out of cold chain, and high manufacturing costs. This limits their use into a very narrow set of applications, making impossible the development of new antibody drugs for hundreds of diseases that affect most of the global population. At Narval, we are solving this problem, designing synthetic antibody mimetic proteins to replace monoclonal antibodies and novel first-in-class therapeutics. Our goal is to create antibody drugs that, until now, have been impossible to develop. Our synthetic antibody mimetic protein platform, or AMP for short, uses CDR3 regions from single-domain shark antibodies fused to a synthetic conoprotein scaffold from a sea snail. Our AMP platform uses molecular and artificial intelligence processes, eliminating the use of in vivo, transgenic, and cellular models. Our AMPs are 40 times smaller than a monoclonal antibody, but with the same biological functions. Our AMPs can cross through tissue barriers, generate
limited immune reactions, even with no humanization, can target very small and hard-to-reach antigens, and are heat-resistant. These advantages gives our AMP platform the ability to develop antibody drugs that have been impossible to develop, like antibody drugs in aerosol, in eye drops, viral delivery, or transdermal release. Our mission is to make antibody drugs as affordable, accessible, and easy to use as common pharmaceutical drugs. Now, let's move to the overhead camera, please. We are going to show you what our AMPs are capable of. Alejandro will show the effect of an AMP over a respiratory virus on a long cell culture. This experiment takes several hours, so today we are going to see only the outcome. Now, move to the demo, please. The microscope. Thank you. Here we can see healthy lung cells, which are representative of someone with no respiratory infection. To these healthy lung cells, we added a sample of the respiratory virus. The virus infected the cells for replication, destroying the cell structure on their way out after a few hours of incubation. On a second sample, we added the virus and our AMP. The antiviral AMP neutralized the virus, blocking its ability to infect the cells and to replicate, protecting the cells and therefore the patient lungs from the viral attack. Now, back to the presentation, please. We designed our AMPs from validated targets, focusing our core activities on development, validation, and preclinical testing of our AMPs. Then we out-license our AMPs to pharmaceutical companies, generating revenue from upfront payments, clinical phase, and approval milestones, and then royalties over sales of the marketed products. Our goal, our vision, is to create the largest portfolio of antibody drugs for unserved therapeutic needs. Our first AMP candidate, AMP1 for diabetic retinopathy, is going into clinical phase next year, and we plan to license it on early 25. Our AMP1 on in vivo testing shown proven capabilities for eye tissue penetration and therapeutic activity on the back of the eye, including antivascularization and a decrease of endothelial cell count of the macula. This means that you will be able to take your treatment in simple eye drops at home, no need for an eye injection. Also, we are working on our first leads for respiratory diseases. Our AMP4 shown full neutralization capability of the COVID-19 virus on lung cell culture at nanomolar level. This is similar to FDA-approved COVID-19 antibody drugs on the market. For me and Alejandro, this is our third startup working together for almost 17 years in biotech. First, we launched a pharmaceutical product for animal health in 14 countries in partnership with a global big pharma. Then we launched a new diagnostic technology using shark antibodies, microfluidics, and artificial intelligence. Now at Narval, we are joining with our academic co-founder, Dr. Alexei Lisea, a world-renowned scientist with deep experience on marine protein engineering and also a former founder. Today, we are launching Narval. Come and join us bringing down the limits on healthcare. We are Narval, and we are the future of antibody drugs today.
Wow, give them a round of applause. I think that's the first time we've ever looked at cells on this stage before live, so thank you for that. Okay, who wants to go first? All right, Bo.
I know the anti-VEGF market. I know that the antibodies work. A lot of them are coming off patent, and you all have to inject them. The data on how it passes to the back of the eye, to the retina, it went by pretty fast on the slides, so I want to understand that more. But my key question is, can you tell us about who can manufacture shark antibodies today, and what do you need to do in a system to be able to manufacture your drug? So how do you making your drug, even for the clinical procedures are going to start next year?
Can you guys take one step closer to me?
Yeah.
Get in the light there. Thank you.
Thank you. So something really important is this is not the full shark antibody. So what we do is we select the shark antibody from our library, and then we just isolate the CDR3 and fuse it to the scaffold. So it's just part of a shark antibody. So these AMPs are completely synthetic. So they are manufactured by synthesis, like a peptide. So we are not using bacterial cells.
You're not, or no CHO cells or anything like that? Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. Can you speak a little more to the ability to get to the back of the eye there by just an eye dropper treatment?
You want to do it? No. Okay, so can you repeat the question, please?
Yeah, so the idea is we don't inject to the back of the eye, right? We put it in the eye and it travels to the back of the eye. And then it wants to have a therapeutic window once there. Can you talk a little bit more there about what that looks like?
Okay, so what we have shown already on testing on animals, around the third hour after the application of the eye drop with the anti-VEGF AMP, we see already the AMP inside the eye. So we measure that. So for example, 10 milligrams of the solution on the eye, we can measure this up to like 24 hours after the application. So what happens is travel through the tissues, and then it gets to the back of the eye, and then it decreases the vascularization, for example, in this case, on the area, and also the decrease on endothelial cell count. So this helps to maintain, it's doing the same thing that the monoclonal antibody, but the application way is different.
Mark?
Can you talk a little bit about how insurers and carriers will play into your commercialization model going forward?
Oh, sorry, I can't hear.
Sorry, can you speak a little bit to, from a commercialization perspective, how do you need kind of insurers and carriers to play into this going forward versus, how much is out of pocket from the consumer versus covered by insurance, and how do you imagine that mix to kind of grow or stay stagnant going forward?
Okay, in this case, well, our business model is to work with the pharma company. The pharma company is the one doing the commercialization of the molecule. So, but it will work the same way as any other monoclonal. So it's the same process, it's the same commercialization strategy, etc. The thing that we are substituting the use of a monoclonal which is injected with an AMP that goes into eye drops, but the model is the same one.
I think I might have missed it, but can you speak to some of the efficacy data that you have? I'm sure you've done some testing on this as well. If you could share some of that, and then what the response has been from pharmaceutical companies to that data and to your designs, especially on the AI aspect of what you're doing to calculate all of these outcomes.
Okay, so let's start with the clinical data. The most important part of the preclinical testing that we did was on animals. So we already have testing on the migration of the AMP inside the eye and the anti-vascularization processes and the therapeutic processes. So what happened is we see the AMP 3 hours after application already inside of the eye, and we see a decrease of, it was like 40% of the endothelial cell count inside of the eye, like around the third day after application.
40% after the third day after application.
Yes.
But the action started within 0 to 3 hours, and you saw that immediately.
No, we didn't measure we didn't measure after the 3 hours that happened. So okay. No, we were measuring like every single day, so every 24 hours. So we don't have data for the first like 3 hours or minutes or so. And in terms of what is the interest from a pharmaceutical company, we have been already meeting with pharmaceutical companies. We're already closing our first contract with a pharmaceutical company for a disease that we cannot disclose right now, but there's already a contracting process.
What is that contract for? Is it for your technology, or is it for your actual output?
No. What we sell or what we license is the molecule. Okay. Already tested, developed, etc. So we transfer the molecule already pre-IND. So ready to go into phase 1, first in humans. Yeah. So we're already closing the first contract, and there's already like other 4 pharmaceutical companies ready to sign.
Sarah, Libby?
I was going to go in a different direction and just ask, you guys have founded something together before, curious kind of lessons learned about yourselves as complementary co-founders, or about go-to-market or whatever, lessons learned from that experience that you're bringing into this venture.
You want to start?
Yeah,
you have 30 seconds.
Okay, very fast. All the adversity that we have found has taught us more than we have learned from school or so that's something I have learned.
Something important for us is the importance about the network that you're building. Right now we have a very big network in the pharma industry, et cetera, because it's already your sort of startup. So we found that's very important. The team that you're building with you, and the relationship that we have already with pharma companies and research centers, et cetera.
Thank you very much. Give them a round of applause. Those are some good questions. I had no idea about any of that stuff. Okay, next up we have from Singapore, we have Flint. Presenting for Flint is Parnav Krishna and Carlo Charles. Come on out, guys.
At Flint, we're building the batteries of tomorrow. Sustainable, cost-effective, and so much safer than the ones we're using today.
Paper batteries. Now, this is our solution for a safer, more sustainable, and cost-efficient future in battery tech. But before I get into that, I want to tell you why we need them. Now, 84% of the world is powered by fossil fuels. That's only a 2% decrease in the past 20 years. 2% that has been converted into green energy. Now, when we talk about green energy, we often think about solar panels, windmills, and so on. But what we often don't realize is the infrastructure that goes behind enabling that switch to green energy. And a huge part of that infrastructure is batteries. But here's the catch. The metals that we use in our current battery tech are not only toxic, but very scarce as well. So if you run the numbers, you'd realize that recycling initiatives, while they're very noble, are nothing but a short-term Band-Aid solution. So if you want that 2% to become 20 or even 50% in the future, given how material intensive our current battery tech is, we are never going to get there. So a dream of a greener future demands greener batteries. And that's precisely where Flint's paper batteries come in. Now, our batteries are rechargeable and they work very similar to lithium batteries. But what we have done is to change the materials that we use. We have invented what we call hydrogel reinforced cellulose paper and utilize zinc and manganese as the two sides of the battery. And thanks to our proprietary tech and knowledge, we have unlocked 3 new features that you have never seen before in any other battery tech. Firstly, our batteries are fully compostable, which means at the end of its life cycle, you can throw it into the ground, and within a month, it would completely degrade. And that's not to say that everyone should start going around throwing our batteries, but it does make things a whole lot easier and cheaper when it comes to recycling. And that reduces the environmental impact significantly. Now, paper. You guys have it in your hands right now. You know how light and flexible it is, right? But this is exactly what gives our batteries an adaptive design. To prove our point, we have designed our batteries in the shape of the Singapore lion emblem as well. Now, our batteries can be bent while operational without affecting its performance or causing any kind of safety hazard. So we went one step further to prove to you how safe our batteries are by even cutting them while they're operational, and it continued to function as per normal. It didn't burst into flames, it didn't overheat, or anything of that kind. Now, to see our batteries in your products, all we have to do is to stack up these paper batteries into the required shape and size, and we practically have a plug-and-play solution to replace any type of lithium batteries that are out there. Now, can we switch to demo? And what we have here on the right is a pouch cell paper battery. And beside it, and that's similar to the one you saw in the video, and beside it, what we have is a coin cell paper battery. Yes, coin cell. Now, we didn't have to reinvent the wheel to create this. We used existing manufacturing processes and equipment. And that shows you how production-friendly and adaptive our batteries are. And this helps us increase our market reach and adoption rate significantly. Can we go back to presentation, please? Thank you. Now, because of how abundant the materials that we use are, the cost of making our paper batteries isn't 2 times or 3 times cheaper, but it's 10 times cheaper. And that's a huge game changer, because think about it. If you're going to keep our battery on a 2x2 matrix against other battery tech, you'd realize that not only is ours one of the most sustainable options, but also one of the most cost-efficient options out there. And that makes us the most practical solution in the market. Now, how about performance? So we decided to jump into the numbers and compare against lithium batteries as the benchmark. And we used 3 industry-standard metrics. And this is how our paper batteries perform today, and this is how we expect it to improve after 1 year of research and development. Now, one thing to note is that we are not just comparing here. We are pioneering. But given our current performance, we decided to come up with 3 versions of specialized paper batteries for a focused area of application, so that we can either match or outperform lithium batteries in these areas. Because when it comes to cost and safety, we are already much further ahead. So when we want to increase the capacity and reduce the volume, you can start to see paper batteries in energy storage systems. And we are working with Collinson Powers, one of Singapore's largest energy storage solution providers, who even runs our airports, military camps, and even universities to make this happen. Now, when it comes to reducing the weight and the volume, you can start to see paper batteries in your consumer tech, wearables, remote sensors. And we're working together with a French pyrotechnic company to replace their batteries in their remote trigger systems for explosives. Last but not least, my favorite is when we try to reduce the weight but increase the capacity. And you finally have the dream of having green batteries in your EVs, so that one day you can be driving an EV that is not only cheaper, but safer and a whole lot more sustainable. Now, the team that's behind building all this has over 30 years of management experience and expertise in areas like material science, mechanical design, advanced physics, among others. And we have some of the top universities and governmental organizations in Singapore backing us up. Because at Flint, we want to be powering the future. Not just any future, but a greener future. And we want to do that together with you. Now, over the next 3 years, our conservative estimate for our revenue projection is at about 360 million. And that's expected to grow 20 times by 2030, given the new markets that we will be venturing into. Now, this is just a small fraction of the rapidly growing billion-dollar energy market that's out there. So we want to invite you to join us on this transformative journey, as we're looking for partnership opportunities and collaborative design ventures. So if you're ready to build that greener future, we are Flint, and we are eager to connect with you. Thank you.
That was a great presentation. Can I get you to stand on the other dot right there? Yes, thank you so much. Okay, Libby, start with you.
Sure. Thanks for the presentation. So you mentioned cycle life, volumetric energy density, and I was curious. Ariel, can you talk about the gravimetric energy density and how it compares?
Okay, so what we're trying to do is like go against, not try to beat lithium batteries in their own game, but try to create a new market where we stand a greater chance of making a new market to go with lithium batteries. So in that sense, we don't use watt hour per kilogram. We use volume metric instead and so. So we don't calculate by gram, we calculate by volume. And by that, it's basically the same thing, but we just use a different approach. In that sense, like the 3 numbers that I shared with you earlier, that's what we are using right now for our research.
Got it. And the active ion, what is the active ion?
Zinc.
Okay, the active ion is zinc.
Yes.
Okay. And so are you then targeting, so some of the applications that you mentioned, gravimetric energy density is a pretty important metric. So can you talk about how kind of not thinking about gravimetric energy density can let you target those markets, like automotive, for example?
Sure. So yeah, you want to?
So that's why we came up with 3 specialized versions. So our 3 different batteries would target a particular market specifically. So when it comes to EVs, we would ensure that we design our paper batteries with some tweaks so that it is much more effective when it comes to reducing the weight and increasing the capacity. So that's how we do it. So the same batteries that we use for EVs can't be used for others. So we just design it specifically for that use case. So that's how we kind of overcome that limitation that we have and turn it into a strength.
Yeah. And right now, to penetrate the market, our first 2 focus is energy storage systems and consumer tech, which is which is the wearables and the remote sensors.
Yep.
Yeah.
Great, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, yeah.
Yep, Mark?
How are you approaching discussions with a lot of the OEMs around designing their product in conjunction with your battery? Because I know that can be one of the tricky 0-to-1 challenges in a space like this.
Yeah, so maybe I can take this. So as we showed you earlier, the coin cell battery. Now, coin cells are a very common shape for lithium batteries as of now. So we can build our paper batteries in any shape or size. So you have a plug-and-play situation. Even if it's a AA or AAA or an 18650 battery, all we have to do is to design it in the same shape, use the same casing, so you don't have to change the way that your products are built. We just have to plug in our batteries into them. But they're lighter, they're cheaper, and they're much more sustainable.
And that is possible because we use the exact same manufacturing process of lithium-ion batteries. So all we have to do is just use existing technologies out there, put in our recipes, and you can easily have a production line of paper batteries, and just optimize the things along the way.
Steve?
For microcomputing and wearables, makes a lot of sense. Can we go back to EVs? At Uber Elevate, the biggest problem for all of the OEMs was weight of the battery. Not so much volume, but weight. because it's in the air, it's not on the ground. So can you speak to some of your reference designs on what you think in concept the volume and the weight would be, and then the power output?
You want to take this?
Yeah, sure. So in terms of the weight and volume, we're paper thin, so that means our batteries are actually lighter than lithium-ion batteries. So what we meant by volume is that since our batteries can be made in any shape possible, we're not restricted to like the pouch cell or cylindrical cells. Our battery could be embedded through the entire body of the car in the future. We're talking about the future of how electric cars can be. And that's one of the things we're definitely looking forward in the future, working with someone.
Well, let's speak to eVTOLs, right? So again, it's in the air, it's aircraft. Weight is a problem. So if you can speak to the specific specs of what that would look like with your technology.
Okay, sure. So maybe an exciting avenue that we're looking at right now, we're actually talking with a airline company that's trying to build electric planes for the future. And the reason they can't use lithium-ion right now is because it's heavy, it's not safe in the higher pressure. But what we are bringing is a battery that's almost half times cheaper than lithium batteries. And not only that, it's also so much modifiable. It can be the shape of a wing, it can be bendable, flexible to the shape of the airplane itself. So these are all things that we're like in talks with, and we're excited for the future about all of these things. Yeah.
Cool.
I'm sure you got this covered, but I have to ask this question on behalf of the audience, which may be wondering, paper battery, does it catch on fire? No, seriously, like especially stacking them up.
Yes.
You got cellulose that could degrade. Like, just help us understand the basics here.
Okay, that's a really, really good question. I love that. And I just want to share that we're using cellulose paper, so it's not just papers with extra fibers in it. And due to that, our batteries are actually fire resistant. So in that sense, we're actually much safer to overheating and explosion. So, yeah.
But if it catches on fire?
If it catches on fire, like as we tested earlier, normally a battery is tested by like poking or tearing the battery, but we literally cut the battery while it's in operation, and it's a quasi-solid material. So that means it won't like the reactive material won't go against each other, and it will still continue working. Or the basically the degradation will just enhance if you cut the battery or make it much.
But even with heat, it's still a biological product in your stack.
Oh, yes.
How does it not degrade even with just accumulation?
So the battery has to be sealed properly. So the compostability comes with when you put in the natural environment with sun, rain, and all those things. So if it's sealed properly, it should work as fine as a lithium battery.
Sarah, quickly?
Yeah, I was just wondering if you could unpack those revenue projections. What assumptions are you baking into that in terms of adoption on the wearables, EV, et cetera?
Okay.
Sure. So this is actually looking at the entire battery market, and we want to target only 0.1% of it for the next 3 to 5 years. So based on that, most of the focus would go into consumer tech and energy storage systems because we already are exploring opportunities and talking to companies in those areas. And when it comes to EVs, we still have to optimize a few more tweaks into our batteries so that it's more, it can be used for EVs in the future. So that's more of a long-term game plan. So that revenue projections is mainly coming from, that 360 million mainly comes from the first two market segments that I was talking about. Yeah.
Thank you so, sorry, we're out of time.
Oh, perfect, no worries.
Thank you so much. Give them a round of applause.
Thank you.
Okay, we have 2 more companies in this round. Up next, from Oakland, California, it's Biotics AI. Presenting for Biotics AI is Rabi Bushami and Kshaskin Sarov. Bring them on out, guys.
My name is Rabi Bustami. At Biotics AI, we're using AI to detect fetal abnormalities. I set out to build a platform that improves the overall quality of diagnostics and makes sure that every single pregnant patient gets the quality of care that they need.
I was raised by a family of obstetricians. My mother, her sister, her brother, all worked in maternal care. My mother passionately worked to improve maternal outcomes in her home country of Yemen as a physician and as a Berkeley researcher. Growing up, I fell in love with coding at the age of 9. But being around my mother's work, I became acutely aware of the growing problems of pregnancy care. In the United States, $16 billion are lost annually as a result of preventable maternal complications. With the increasing shortage of OBGYNs, the growing rate of pregnancy complications, and new legislation negatively impacting maternal diagnostics, it's becoming more difficult to identify these problems earlier to prevent tragic outcomes. In the developed world,
half of pregnant patients with a fetal malformation are misdiagnosed due to an error in ultrasound by ultrasound operators. Globally, 107 million mothers do not have access to the minimum standard diagnostic ultrasound. This is the #1 reason for misdiagnosis for the mass majority of fetal abnormalities. Introducing Biotics AI. Biotics AI helps detect fetal abnormalities in ultrasound earlier with greater frequency and higher efficiency. What you're going to be seeing is a real prenatal ultrasound exam, where what we've done is to protect the patient's confidentiality and security is download the exam to a local machine, remove any identifiable information, but we'll be uploading the screening live for you to see how our AI will process the screening. Move to Zoom. We have with us today our Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Hisham Al-Gamal, a maternal fetal medicine specialist, along with a patient who, for the purposes of this presentation, we've nicknamed Sarah, who's been kind enough to spend time with us today.
Hello, everyone. So I've just conducted a second trimester fetal anatomical examination using ultrasound. Actually, what I did is I intentionally mimicked a low-quality ultrasound scan. And with these low-quality ultrasound scans, key regions in the fetal brain, heart, abdomen, and limbs are usually missing. So let us see if Biotics AI could solve this very common operator-dependent error. So I'll log into Biotics AI. I'll start my reporting.
Move to demo. This is what Dr. Hisham is viewing right now. Biotics AI is a vendor-agnostic, cloud-based solution that can integrate with any ultrasound machine over a standard API. Biotics AI has processed the entirety of Sarah's ultrasound exam to validate the completeness and quality of the screening, ensuring the appropriate capture of over 80 different anatomical views and structures, providing feedback to Dr. Hisham if he missed any key regions. A third of patients in the United States receive incomplete screenings. And if there's an abnormality in one of these regions that doesn't get captured, then the patient is almost always misdiagnosed. Move to Zoom.
So as you have seen through Biotics AI, some feedback came back that some images are missing from the scan. So I have rescanned the patient and I have recaptured the transcerebellar plane. And now I'll upload the image back into the system to see if the error has been rectified.
Move to demo. So what we've done is now we've uploaded a new image. Earlier, Dr. Hisham did not screen for one of the standard views of the fetal brain. But because our solution provided that feedback, Dr. Hisham can now make sure that he's captured the entirety of the screening, and our AI has validated the completeness of the scan by ensuring that all of the key structures in this region have been appropriately captured. Now, Sarah is having a healthy pregnancy, and we give her all of our best thoughts and prayers as she continues along this journey. But our solution does not stop at quality control. It actually moves into guided diagnostics. Here's an example of a pregnant patient with a fetal malformation in the fetal spine. Our AI was able to localize this fetal malformation, providing feedback to the obstetrician so that way this abnormality doesn't go unnoticed and that appropriate intervention can be taken. Move to slides. We conducted clinical studies on obstetricians that historically performed poor quality ultrasound scans, and when Biotics AI was used, the screening completeness rate increased by 20%. Additionally, because our AI can extract all this valuable information, we were able to automate reporting and documentation and save up to 8 minutes per patient on documentation, providing value to the patient, physician, and the hospital. Now, to build out our technology, it took a world-class team of machine learning engineers and obstetricians with previous experience in delivering prenatal care-based research and delivering complex machine learning algorithms for different types of use cases. As far as our business model goes, we're selling our solution to hospitals. We're leveraging a hybrid pricing model with a subscription-based charge for baseline subscription costs and a volume-based pricing model for API calls to our algorithms. Hospitals are incentivized to leverage our solution because of the valuable ROI we're providing through time savings that they're able to receive through increased volume that they can get with patients, reducing the number of patient callbacks, mitigating costs around medical malpractice, and increased hospital reimbursements in the future as we qualify for NTAP.
And I'm sorry we're out of time.
All right.
Thank you so much. Give them a round of applause. Where was your doctor located?
Dr. Hashem is actually in Egypt. So we partnered with university hubs in Alexandria, Tanta, Cairo, and partnered with physicians that are leaders in maternal diagnostics there to build out our initial data sets.
Right on. Sarah, let's start with you.
Yeah, I was wondering if you could speak to the ultrasound market. Like, how fragmented is it? It sounds like you're going direct to hospitals and not engaging with the hardware players themselves. But if you could just give us sort of the lay of the land in the ultrasound market as it relates to your strategy.
Sure, yeah. So we're a software as a medical device. So where we really fit within the ultrasound market is actually in these post-processing ultrasound solutions. These are reporting solutions. The most common ones are Viewpoint 6, AS software, and these are third-party solutions that are used today for documenting and reviewing the medical images. And that's really where we sit today. As far as the overall size of the market that we're going to be tackling with our initial solution, we're looking at roughly $2 billion for quality control and for automating reporting and documentation. As far as our go-to-market strategy goes, it's going to be a combination of leveraging distribution channel partnerships and going directly to hospitals.
Maybe just a follow-up. On that software layer, are you purely additive to that, or is this a situation where you're replacing that tool, more of a rip and replace, but your widget is better than theirs?
Sure, yeah, so it's a combination of the two. So we can either work with these players or we can replace existing archaic solutions if hospitals are no longer happy with them. But yeah, we're under NDAs, so I can't go too farther into detail. But
Libby?
Sure. Kind of expanding on the market question, can you talk a little bit about competition and with AI tools being so widely available to so many, what you think can put any single company ahead in that market?
Sure. Yeah. So the last piece that we were going to go for was really talk about our data moat. So really our long-term vision is to be the AI diagnostics platform for reproductive health. So we're starting with obstetrics, but we're moving into adjacent specialties like gynecology, urology, and neonatology. We've built out an underlying data infrastructure that's allowed us to build out our data set of over 8 million prenatal ultrasound images, partner with 8 healthcare institutions. This costs the average corporation tens of millions of dollars. We've bootstrapped it with less than $100,000. And this growing data moat is really going to be our unfair advantage as far as being able to capitalize on the market. As far as the existing players go, ultrasound machine manufacturers are also working with startups like us because they're not going to focus on every single niche use case. They're really competing with each other in regards to their business models. And then there are a few incumbents that are coming in that are around the world that are focusing on this problem as well, which is a good thing because this is a big problem. So,
Bo?
Yeah, I'm going to say something that's probably never been said on this stage before. You had me at Egypt. Because I was wondering about your data moat and how you'd actually do this, but I have 3 medical AI companies out of Egypt, and I know exactly how we did it. My guess is you know them and they're your friends, and we understand how we train an AI better than anyone else in the world. So I have no questions.
All right.
That was a waste.
I thought it was a good line.
Yeah, that's fine. Let's go to Steve.
When you talk to OBGYN specialty offices, hospitals, health systems, what's the #1 pushback that you're getting from them today?
Sure, yeah. I mean, when it comes to actually like selling to hospitals, you're selling to the physician, you're selling also to the hospital, the financial decision maker. So you want to make sure that you're providing value to both. So when it comes to like value for physicians, it's really coming down to making sure that they don't have any difficulty around like leveraging a new technology, and you want to make sure that you integrate seamlessly within their existing technologies. So you're not accidentally adding in more workload. So it's really important to hone in on how that product fits within that workflow. In regards to the decision makers for the financial decision makers, It really comes down to what is the return on investment and making sure we've made a clear use case around this is how quality control, improved diagnostics actually improves ROI for the hospital. So.
On the workflow question, or in your answer there, do they prefer it as a third-party software application to look at post-processed images, or do they want it as part of the embedded system? Like, do they want it in the Samsung rig? And like, what's their ideal, the customer's ideal versus obviously yours is not to be embedded?
Right. Yeah. I guess there's two parts to answering this question. As far as the customer's ideal, at the end of the day, they're already using these third-party softwares for post-processing. So they're not necessarily really doing these types of reviews directly on the ultrasound machines, with the exception of one potential solution that's used today in the market. So it's not a huge deviation. Now, as far as how we integrate seamlessly with ultrasound machines, I mean, we have a vendor-agnostic solution. We can actually plug directly via an iPad into the ultrasound machine, so it's right there for them. So there's no real difference to the OB/GYN. So we can actually accommodate both workflows. If they'd rather leverage their own desktops, their own laptops for post-processing and for evaluating the actual ultrasounds, we can do that. If they want it on site, which actually you kind of saw with Dr. Isham with his tablet next to the ultrasound machine, he can also have access to the solution right then and there.
So last question goes to Mark.
Can you talk quickly about distribution channels a bit? So what does it cost you to get obtain a hospital directly versus via, I don't know if you're talking about trade associations or something of the like, but would love to understand your different channels of go-to-market.
You have 15 seconds.
Going direct to hospital, so we've tried to make our solution as self-service as possible. Really the costs go into like the labor costs around making sure that we're working with the IT systems and we're getting security approvals. If we're just looking at outside of labor costs, maximum $2,000 per like institution with potential for like $1 million on what the contract sizes could be. In regards to distribution channels, we are looking at, so there's existing healthcare software solutions that we could leverage that are integrated within obstetrics workflows. But there's also marketplaces that ultrasound machine manufacturers are providing. And then there's other distribution channels. For example, like malpractice firms can actually promote certain solutions if it actually decreases costs on their side because you're mitigating malpractice cases. So,
Thank you so much. Give them a round of applause. Remember when picture offs were all about social apps and camera things, and now we have deep tech, and it's fantastic. And we have one more deep tech company coming out. So from Medford, Massachusetts, we have Electrified Thermal Solutions. Presenting for Electrified Thermal Solutions is Donnie Smith and Daniel Stack. Give them a round of applause and bring them on out.
My name is Dan Stack, co-founder and CEO of Electrified Thermal Solutions. We're working every day to decarbonize the hottest industries with electrified heat. Thank you. So we have a massive problem today. There is no affordable way to decarbonize our heavy industries. Cement, steel, glass, the building blocks of our society all need a tremendous amount of energy. And that energy needs to be cheap, reliable, and hot, often hot as flames. Our zero carbon options today are just one out of the three, cheap. As soon as you try to make them reliable, being cheap is already incredible, but when you try to make them reliable to power, say, a 24/7 cement plant, you 6x the cost, say if you're making hydrogen, which isn't going to be affordable for society. So we need a new approach to decarbonize our heat. That's why Electrified Thermal Solutions was founded, and that's why we're developing the Joule Hive thermal battery. This system takes in electricity from renewables or off-peak nuclear or hydro whenever it's cheap, whenever it's abundant, whenever it's available. We turn it into on-demand heat stored into the system. We make hot gas with that system, blow air through it, make hot air, and deliver it to your furnace, to your boiler, to your kiln, in place of the fossil fuels you usually burn. And so with this device, we can turn the power from those sources into reliable industrial heat. We can do this hot as they need, 1800 Celsius, the same as hydrogen, say, but we can keep it affordable, at least 3 times cheaper than hydrogen. And best of all, we're retrofittable. We can attach to your existing process, pipe in our hot gas to your furnace, your boiler, even your turbine, to give you the energy that you're used to, so you don't have to radically change what you're doing to decarbonize what you're doing. The Joule Hive is unmatched because of a new technology that we've been developing and patenting. And that is the building block of industrial decarbonization, the electrically conductive fiber brick, or e-bricks if you like. These bricks are from normal refractory materials, normal bricks that line furnaces today. We use semiconductor doping to make them electrically conductive. The result is a material that can go hotter and last longer than electric heaters today. So we can use this building block. In the picture here in green, we stack these up to massive scales to build our Joule Hive thermal battery. And it's 3-in-1. It's a giant electric heater, it's a giant thermal store, and it's a giant heat exchanger that gets the energy out, all built from cheap, affordable, abundant bricks. So this tech is roughly 10 years in the making, mostly during my time at MIT. You can see me here looking very cheery, doing some lab work. And so the system, these bricks had humble beginnings in the wet lab, but ultimately, I had the pleasure of meeting my co-founder, Dr. Joey Cable, and we got to work building out ETS. And we started working with commercial refractory suppliers and fiber brick suppliers to scale up this technology to what it could be. So we'll go to demo, go live now to our lab in Medford, Mass, just outside Boston, where Joey and our lead test engineer can showcase our progress. So these are some pellets we started out with, just industrial scale, industrial quality powders. We then moved to full-size bricks and aggregates that embellish all of the ways we make bricks. And then we ultimately went to press on 1/2 a ton in the past several months, roughly a 1000x scale-up of these electrically conductive bricks. Our test rigs at the lab here are there to test materials properties, but also to run electric heating tests. And here you can see a wattage loading test of a brick conducting the electricity and generating the intense wattages and temperatures that industries need, that our customers need. And then if we go over to our pilot facility, which we commissioned earlier in the summer this year, this is where we stack up full stacks of bricks and electrically heat them up in those configurations we showed earlier. You could see through that window them glowing hot at roughly 1700 Celsius. And we can emulate the full operating conditions of the Joule Hive in this system for our commercial scale-up in the next couple of years. All right, thanks, guys. We'll go back to presentation. So from our elevator-sized pilot, we'll be building products soon on the shipping container-sized scale, but ultimately we're building to tall towers that can put out hundreds of megawatts of heat, which is what our industrial customers need, and we know we can get there due to industrial experience at these scales of stacking bricks. The first product is a few megawatts in, a few megawatts out, and holds 25 megawatt hours. We can put out peak temps of 1800 Celsius, and we can give you constant temp and constant flow rate as you need at your industrial site. And the goal is to have this on commercial customer sites in 2025 after we demo this next year in 2024. As for where we can deploy, there are areas today where it pays off due to the wind energy coming online that is driving prices very negative across the country, many areas of renewables. This is over the last few years, electricity prices. We see that in the Midwest, you can operate in areas today where 50% of the year, electricity is cheaper than natural gas as a heat source. We can pay back in 5 years while offsetting 80% of your carbon emissions. We can't beat fossil fuels everywhere yet, but even in regulated utility environments, there are time of use rates where we can absorb cheap electricity and actually give you a 3-year payback over your next best option for decarbonization, electric boilers. And we have large customer traction across every major industrial vertical, and these customers are moving through our pipeline towards letters of intent, as well as great government grant opportunities. We are deploying aggressively to 2 gigawatts and $500 million in revenue per year by 2030. And our ultimate goal is industry electrified by 2045. A Joule Hive in every furnace, boiler, and power plant, roughly a $3 trillion market. So we're looking to work with industrial partners to reach our vision here. We'd like to decarbonize your sites, especially those who are interested in first-of-a-kind deployments on your site. And of course, we are always a growing team, solving the toughest problems in the hottest space. So please come find us at our booth, go to our website. We'd love you to join our team if you're interested. Thanks so much.
Amazing. Give them a round of applause. Okay, Libby, do you want to start?
Sure. Great presentation, thank you. You mentioned that you're not quite competitive with fossil fuels as a thermal energy source yet. Can you describe what you need to achieve within your product to be able to compete?
Sure. So in some of those areas, like where the electricity prices are very cheap, we are competitive. Ultimately, the price of energy that comes out of these systems is all about the electricity going in. So the box itself and thermal batteries as a technology can be very cheap. But you need to, so we can basically make it as painless as possible to turn that electricity into heat. But basically, wind and solar have come down majorly in price, and we need to find the spots where they have the cheapest offerings. And that's kind of the major metric there as far as competing directly with fossil fuels. But we're definitely, depending on where you are, definitely at parity, now and in the few years of this
So
decade.
for the solution to be really scalable, you would need to be able to compete with fossil fuels with an offtake price of renewables at around, at a standard market price of around maybe 4 cents a kilowatt hour. Can you talk about how you would measure up to fossil fuels at, a PPA price in the range of where you're seeing renewables today, and any advancements you need to make on the technology to be able to compete with fossil fuels at that kind of offtake price?
Sure. So, there are PPAs today that are being signed in the, say, $20 a megawatt hour range, 25. And what that comes out to, forgetting our system at all, is around $6 per MMBTU. And so depending on where you are and what industrial rates you're paying, you'll see, $5 to $7 per MMBTU. So that price as a starting point is in striking distance.
So that's for converting the electricity into heat initially, but then it needs to go into your system. There's a CapEx associated with that,
Absolutely.
and then you need to draw the heat out through the air heat exchanger, right?
So our CapEx adds, $1 or $2 of MMBTUs. So, we're starting at that solar price of $5, $6, $7. The thermal storage approach, the dual thermal battery can add a couple dollars of MMBTU, but it's a small portion. So even if we drive that to zero, what dominates the levelized cost of energy and the energy that the customer experiences is what the electricity markets are doing. But as you saw, we can use off-peak electricity that's negative priced or below their levelized costs and basically do a service to the grid in that way, because the grid wants off-takers that are flexible, and they'll reward that. So there are opportunities to be below the price of natural gas, and we're seeing that now.
Thanks.
Poe, let's go to you.
Yeah, I hate to be the guy who always asks the question, will it catch on fire? But hear me out for a second. One thing you're portraying here is a kiln, an electric kiln, where the heat itself is acting on the metallurgy. Another one is it's essentially an electric battery, where it just runs very hot, and then you're having to turn that battery back into electrons or into work. But how does that work in like an insurance world, where essentially you've got a large industrial battery in a facility, and you probably have to separate it, it's like running really hot. Have you been talking to insurers? How do they feel about the safety of this and the non-risk you have? Like, one of the things I hate to do is turn on my home oven, and I've got electronics in it, and I've got an oven running at 500 degrees. Those electronics don't last 18 months. So depending on what you're doing with this work and at the proximity to heat, if you can just help explain how that's managed in your company.
Sure. So the electronics are far away from the actual hot spot of the system.
Thank you.
And the bricks are well insulated in really standard furnace box type of stuff. So from an insurance perspective, from a perspective of, is this risky? Is it going to blow up? This is really not any different from thermal storage, thermal systems at industrial sites today, right? You go to these kilns that are operating at flame temps. The temps aren't unusual. Our materials are already oxide bricks, so they don't oxidize, they don't chemically react. They're less reactive than, virtually any other storage technique because it's just heat. So the system just sits there hot, and that's the risk. As long as you're insulated well, there's no chemical reaction that could catch fire or something like this. So that's, we consider it one of the safest approaches to storage because this stuff just sits there hot, unlike, say, chemical batteries, for example, where you got to really pay attention.
Olivia, do you have another question?
Sure. Can you describe how you're thinking about your business model? Will you try to sell systems to your customers? Are you trying to provide heat offtake agreements?
Definitely. So we're looking at both. And what we've been learning is that people will have different interests in both. So, we think it's going to be a mix. The bigger, more mature industrials that have, energy departments that they can call upon to smartly operate a thermal battery, right? They don't need heat as a service. They can operate as they think makes the most sense. And when they take that ownership of operation, then they're going to get, more control and less price up front. Smaller groups who want heat as a service, because they don't have that kind of, they need their heat, they want it zero carbon, heat as a service is going to be a better fit for those groups.
And what do you feel like is a better fit for you as a business to keep the systems on your balance sheet and provide, or some sort of like ownership structure that's tied to you guys and then provide offtake of heat, or would you prefer to kind of sell full systems to either your customers or a third party?
So we expect to be, early on, we'll be on balance. Another feature of heat as a service is that way when we install a system that we're building our first of a kinds, people only pay for the heat we give them, right? So on balance, heat as a service is kind of a nice thing early. Off balance sheet ultimately is the plan.
It's almost like, Libby, you worked in the Department of Energy. Yeah, okay. Thank you so much. Give them a round of applause.
Thanks very much.
Well, that was a lot, and I appreciate you sitting here through it, and I hope you enjoyed it. We're going to be back again today in the afternoon with another set of 5 companies, and then again tomorrow with 5 more companies. On the last day of Disrupt, TechCrunch editorial will pick the 5 finalists, and they'll come present one more time. So we'll see you all again this afternoon. Thank you so much.